All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and thank you for listening to today's episode. But before we get there, thank you for either downloading on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you're coming here from the TikTok at Retold Richie Mars, or the Instagram, same handle. But this is a big topic today. And of course, I can't do big topics alone because I'm only one lonely person here. I need to call him back up and help. So I had to reach into the resources and I had to call a very knowledgeable source. I had to call in Scotty Wrestling. Scotty, how we doing?
What's going on, Richie? I'm doing good, man.
All right, so Scotty, tell us what you're doing these days, like content wise, just life wise, in the wrestling biz. What are you doing?
Well, it's been a little slow. I had a family tragedy earlier this year, so I stepped away for a while and slowly getting back into it. But it's definitely been slow. I honestly don't keep up as much. I'm honestly playing catch up like every week. So what is it right now? I still have to finish watching Raw, and but honestly, just I'm rethinking my approach. Like before, I was a little all over the place. Like I give my take and then try to put out something
Mhm.
funny. And honestly, like I'm just watching a lot of other creators. Getting guys' takes and trying to see where I can get in, where I can fit in. But still enjoying Wrestle Talk. Still enjoying being part of the wrestling community. And thanks again for having me on here, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
of
it.
course, man. Like it is really tough, especially nowadays, to keep up with everything in wrestling because there's just so much of it. You got
Yeah.
WWE, AEW. If you want to watch Ring of Honor, you could watch that. GCW, Stardom,
Yeah.
Marigold, Impact or TNA, and then we have NWA, which is still in business,
I,
shockingly today. And that's going
yeah,
to go
man.
right into our topic of Black Saturday, they call it. Uh,
Yes,
the
sir.
the one of the most pivotal days in the wrestling monopoly history. Now, what did you know of Black Saturday prior to knowing about it, and what you know about it now?
No, honestly, nothing, bro. Like prior to 2020, all I ever knew about wrestling was WWE,
Mhm.
and it was honestly my cousin Stan Michael, who's a wrestler. Um, he got me back into it. It was like everything was shut down in Randall. He was like, "Yo, like I want to watch WrestleMania at your place." I just said, "Why the heck not?" And the rest is history. I just kept deep diving into everything. I didn't realize how prominent it was worldwide. I didn't realize how prominent it still was today.
Mhm.
Like I didn't like discovering the internet wrestling community was like one of the best things that happened in the last couple of years. So I've been doing a lot of history, and Black Saturday was something that I kept seeing, like especially on wiki pages. It's like Jim Crockett, um, Arn Anderson, all these names pop up, and then it's like Black Saturday. So I'd say maybe within the last 4 months or so is when I kind of did a deep dive. I'm like, okay, what the heck
Mhm.
happened? Because like everybody's got their version of the story. Everyone's got a different take on what exactly happened. So I think I got like an okay understanding of it. But even then, it's like I don't. If you're studying something, you never really know everything.
Yeah,
Like you never really know enough.
absolutely. Because I think as we're recording this, Dark Side of the Ring did Black Saturday, like a documentary on the actual event. And I was
Mm,
just like, okay, that's a weird like topic to for Dark Side of the Ring, but I guess its dark side is that it was something that happened in wrestling that's never been done. You're taking over television stations over the local territories, and
yeah.
you're putting your own product in there. So pretty much what Black Saturday is or was is Vince McMahon of the WWF, WWE, whatever you want to call it, broke away from the NWA in the early 80s. And usually that's a sign either A, you're getting out of the business entirely, or B, you're trying to do a, a takeover,
Yeah.
and with Vince and his global expansion, like what we the best way we could call it is that he would go to these local television stations saying, hey, here's $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, air our tapes instead, and he would
Mm,
agree to, at least with the local promoters, it's like, hey, give me your tapes of your top stars and we'll air them. But the thing is, the top stars that he would air, he would sign away to WWF, WWE. Like Hulk Hogan in the AWA is a prime example of this.
Yeah.
So it's just like, whoa, this is like a smart, like kind of like chess move on the part of Vince McMahon. Even though he promised his dad he wouldn't take over the territories, he then took over the territories. In a way.
Oh yeah.
So, what is your thought on the business, at least, move of trying to monopolize, whether it's wrestling, whether it's any kind of competition? Do you think that's a smart strategy, or do you think it would have been easy for the whole thing to blow up into his face?
I mean, just from a purely business standpoint, I mean, I doubt Vince McMahon is the first person to go into business for himself. No pun
Hmm.
intended. But from a business standpoint, yeah, it was a smart move. I mean, ultimately, he turned wrestling into something that I don't think anyone ever thought it could be, like multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar, business. I think prior to that, like wrestling promotions were ran by guys who were rich off of other ventures. Like the NWA was populated by guys who had like boxing promotions and a whole bunch of other businesses. Wrestling kind of just happened to be one of their many ventures. I mean, there were a handful of guys that were just wrestling promoters. Like I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Vince Senior was
Yeah,
primarily just
yeah, he
wrestling.
was wrestling, and I think he also did boxing as well.
Okay, yeah, like Crockett and this, that, and the third. So it really just depends on like business wise. Yeah, it was a smart move, but the other side of it is like, okay, does he respect the business really to do that? Like he had to have known like he was putting guys out of business. And if you talking about he's going to stations like, yo, give me the wrestlers tapes and this, that, and the third. I'm like, okay, he ain't thinking about nobody else. He's like, I'm trying to put bread on my table. You come work for me. I'll put the money in your pocket, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, he knew what he was doing.
Especially because the territory system was such an ingrained part of the wrestling culture back then. You had Northeast, you had Florida, you had World Class, you had California, you had Mid South, you had all these different territories. And for the wrestlers, it was like, okay, I'll finish up in one territory. I'm kind of getting stale here, or money's not coming in. I'll just go do a different territory, whether it's like New York,
Yeah.
Philadelphia, whatever. But now, when you monopolize all that, you
Hmm.
have to hope that the biggest fish in that pond gets you. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if not, then you're going to be working twice as hard as a wrestler. And it's going to not only impact you career wise, it's going to impact you financially as well. And just trying to get your
Absolutely.
name out there. And with the territories and with WWE pretty much gobbling all of them up, it kind of parallels what we know as the independents today. You know,
Yeah.
independents are a lot smaller than what territories would be,
But the Terry was winning, yeah.
but again, now it's like you have the term like indie wrestling. Back then you didn't have like, oh, he's a territory wrestler, or he's like anything like
Yeah.
that was as pronounced. It's like you're like in a part of the NWA, and the NWA was this giant umbrella for all these territories, whether it was WWF in the beginning, World Class, Florida, etc. So with Black Saturday, essentially, what happened was on TBS, Vince McMahon pretty much went behind. He asked outright for Ted Turner, "Hey, can I have the station?" Ted's like, "No." So he's like, "All right, bet." So he went, and he went to the Briscoes. He went to a couple other people from Georgia Championship Wrestling, and pretty much uh, got them to sell their stocks, and so he could be in charge of the company. But
Yeah.
Ole Anderson, who didn't know anything about this, uh, basically like filled out an injunction, but it was already too little, too late, and Georgia Championship Wrestling became to Vince McMahon. And instead of the agreement of, hey, you're going to have live wrestling on Georgia, it was just a rerun of of like classic
No,
WWF
WWE.
matches. And what's so funny to me is, again, the audience did not like this. They
Oh
They
heck
didn't
no.
like it because it's the WWF style of wrestling, which is more entertainment based. It's more gimmicky, and
Yeah.
Southern wrestling is wrestling. It's just like bar
Yeah.
fights and stuff like that. And you'll have
Yeah.
these different contingents of, and we've seen it today with just the wrestling community at large. What is good wrestling? You know,
Oh,
it's
definitely.
almost like
Yeah.
an ice cream shop that only serves vanilla. It's the it's
Nah,
it's not it's not gonna
nah,
be it's not gonna be that great.
that's a good
Yeah,
analogy.
so when
Yeah.
you read up on this and just the implications of Black Saturday and the ratings dipping, did it surprise
Yeah.
you? Because since it's like the only wrestling that's being shown, did it surprise you that the ratings tanked right away, or did you see like yeah that would make sense why the ratings would tank because it's completely different than people were expecting when they were watching Georgia Championship Wrestling?
I was surprised because I was still shoddy on the history. Like I didn't realize, when I was deep diving and they would have clips of the show, World Championship Wrestling. I'm thinking that okay, WCW's that
Mm-hmm.
old. Like that's the first thing in my
Right.
mind because that's what I knew growing up. So then I did, a little digging on Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm like, okay, so this promotion I've never heard of actually had the number one wrestling show for years prior to McMahon coming in. Um, the more you dig, it's like okay, it makes perfect sense. Like you had Mid South, Mid Atlantic, and all these other wrestling promotions. Like when it came to anything below what state I would say Virginia, these guys dominated the industry. And I'm from New York, so like growing up, all I ever saw on TV was either WWF or WCW. I didn't realize the limited reach McMahon had up until that point. So no, I'm not surprised that the ratings dipped. I also really wasn't entirely aware about like uh, the entertainment aspect of wrestling wasn't all that prominent in the
Mm-hmm.
South. Like I assumed like like gimmicks and costumes was like always a part of it. You know, the more you learn something new every day. But um, I feel like that's a lesson that Vince almost never really learned because, and this is me sidetracking a little bit, but I think it's kind of speaks to the same point. I feel like he made the same mistake when he ended up buying WCW,
Mm-hmm.
and the plan was initially to have both companies' flagship shows. So I think they were planning to do away with SmackDown. It's supposed to be Monday Nitro and Raw. The mistake he made was doing Nitro. I think it was. It was either Nitro or Raw in a territory where people weren't into that.
Yeah. So the story that I've heard was it was so the storyline was Shane McMahon bought WCW, and
Yeah.
the first WCW quote unquote match that they did was Booker T and Buff Bagwell. And the thing is, they were in a territory where they weren't going to be recepted well. It was,
Yeah.
I believe, if my memory's correct, I think they were near Connecticut or something. I'm just going to go Google that real quick. But the funny thing is, the week after, they would be in Atlanta, where
Mm,
WCW was very prominent.
yeah.
So it's just like, oh god, it's the first it's the first thing that pops up, and it's just like the worst of WWF. I'm just like, oh
Oh
jeez.
shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch this live. I started watching wrestling in 2003, so the invasion, I missed all of that.
Oh word.
Yeah, I was just a little Long Island boy, like saying, "Oh, the invasion, this must be good," and then
Are you a New
yeah,
Yorker
I'm in New
too?
York, yeah.
Oh, how did I not
Yeah,
know that? What's good,
oh
bro?
yeah, yeah, Long Island.
Okay, I'm out in
Oh,
Rockland.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah, we in the burbs
yeah,
over
it's
here.
good. Well,
But yeah, like when it came to like what rep, I think the thing is that McMahon's approach to wrestling, it wasn't just a presentation. I think it was like the people just knew that he was just a suit
yeah,
about the money, and it showed in the product because like down south wrestling, like everyone was like bloodthirsty when it came to the stuff, like the passion that they had for it. So no, of course they weren't going to buy McMahon's like kiddie
yeah.
product. Um, But again, before I looked up on it, I would have thought like, yo, as soon as this guy steps in, he's taking over because obviously McMahon is known as the guy that ended the territories. I didn't realize, how much zigzagging and in between stuff went down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the zigs and the zags that come in there. I'm not talking about Dolph Ziggler, but again,
Ha!
but
Man,
I had to put him in there. I love Nick.
that's a sore
I
spot,
love
man.
Nick Nemeth so much. Yeah,
Heck yeah.
but what some of the more surprising things that you learned about Black Saturday that were just like whoa, like how did this happen back then?
So, I mean, obviously, it was the way he went about, getting the TV time. But I'm like, and like you said before, he gets a spot and they start playing reruns and like stuff that I guess a lot of people didn't really care about, even if you were a WWF fan. So it wasn't new content. It was like stuff you're gonna watch get in his regular program. So not only are you giving people something they don't want, you're giving them leftovers.
Mm,
Like, bruh, like what are we doing here? So um his ratings go down and then he ends up selling to Crockett, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken. And I think this is during the time when Crockett was president of the NWA. So this was during that time period where NWA and Jim Crockett were like this. People thought of it as like the same promotion. Um, and this is what, 87 when he finally sold it?
Yes, let me just double check. It was I'm not sure if it's 87 or because they said on the special of uh the Dark Side of the Ring that because the
Mm-hmm.
tag that they gave McMahon was $1 million. And in that special they said he used that to fund the first WrestleMania, but the timelines are kind of like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
kind of like they're not really connecting. So I'm not sure if it was,
Yeah.
but it's $1 million, you know what I mean? So it's like you're gonna get it. So let's see. So it was an offer to Bill Watts, and that's when they did Mid South out of Oklahoma on TBS, and that was trouncing McMahon in the ratings on TBS.
Mm,
So then went to Jim Crockett, and that was like, yeah, 87, 88. Yeah.
okay.
So yeah,
So,
it was fairly quick the turnaround from so that's about 4 years on Turner, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
So it's like around like 3 or 4 years.
like 3 or 4
But
years.
again, it's like with the ratings going down in that amount of time, it just shows how much of the product of WWF what it was hitting overall with all these other territory stations, but not here, which is amazing.
Nah, yeah.
So
And something, oh,
no,
I'm sorry.
go right ahead.
No, I was saying something. Like even reading up on something I wasn't sure about. It's like, okay, once Vince bought that stock, initially it was for the TV slot, but what happened to? I wasn't sure what happened to Georgia Championship Wrestling promotion. Did it get absorbed into WWF, or it just ceased because he took the TV time?
So they renamed the show WWF Georgia Championship Wrestling. So they
Oh, see, I didn't even know
so
that.
like after the initial like reruns and tapes, because the original agreement was have live wrestling from Georgia. After those tapes from a while, they started having live matches from Georgia a little bit,
Gotcha.
but
Okay.
initially it was just to flood the station with WWF tapes, just like this is our product,
Eh,
and it's just kind of like
eh.
imagine if like whatever somebody buys Raw's time slot from WWE, and then it's just you know GCW or like Juggalo Championship Wrestling. People are gonna be like, "What is this? What are we watching here?
What have we here?
What is this malarkey you've been going right over here?"
Yo.
It's like that sophisticated Winnie the Pooh meme. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
but
I've
it's
seen that joke.
but it's just crazy because I think even back then people realized there were so many different styles of wrestling. Now it's just more
Yeah.
pronounced because it's like you have the WWE style, you have the AEW style, you have Lucha Libre, you have Strong style, you have
Hmm.
European style chain wrestling, you have now people who are doing hybrid wrestling MMA like promotions like Bloodsport.
Wait, oh, see, I ain't
Yeah,
heard of that.
so
Wait a second.
Bloodsport is Josh Barnett, if you know who that is, former UFC fighter. I believe he was the heavyweight
Oh,
champion at one point too. So basically, it's not ropes; it's just the mat, and the posts. So it's a
yeah.
hybrid of MMA and wrestling, and it's pretty cool, because it's like you'll have like
What?
Mox and like MMA gear because it's Mox, and he just wants to kick the crap out of people.
Plumber Moxley. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll tell you this much: it's a lot better than Raw Underground. Dear, dear,
Oh
dear.
gosh. Yeah, I watched a
Yeah.
little bit of that. You know,
It could have worked. It could have worked.
it could have. The problem was Shane
The
McMahon.
problem was it didn't.
That too.
Oh boy! But with Black Saturday and just trying to uh, enlist the whole WWE wave think of trying to deprogram the audience. And let's go a little bit further when WWE, WWF was the only game in town after they bought WCW. What, like, when people think of wrestling, it's WWE. Now
Yeah.
that was pretty much the primary goal. But now when you have new companies like AEW, Ring of Honor, TNA Impact show other sides of wrestling, then people are like, "Oh wow, this is different." So they either really like it or really don't like it. And you could point to Black Saturday as the initial force of tribalism or the creation of tribalism in wrestling.
Oh shoot. Nah, bro, you're
Yeah.
right.
So, what are your thoughts on tribalism? Do you agree that Black Saturday kind of was almost the squeaky wheel that was getting the grease to tribalism? And how do you think it evolved over time?
But it would have to be because like it was the first clash of cultures. I mean, if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it. I mean, I could be speaking out of term. It's just like a general understanding. It's like when it comes to Southern pride, it's like, okay, what's ours is ours. Y'all keep whatever y'all got going on up north. So for Vince to bring it into their space is like, okay, we don't like this shit. Take it back, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So I think the tribalism in wrestling could also be attributed to like a culture shock, a clash of cultures, so to speak, the North and the South. But, obviously, based in the different wrestling styles. I think that tribalism, the thing about the impact that WWE has had, considering the large fan base, too many people weren't aware of those other styles. And you had plenty of casual fans, like myself. I was a casual fan for years. You couldn't have told me that there was another promotion out there that did anything close to WWF. I would have called that fake, even though I knew WWF was fake. I'm like, get out of here. It's just
Mm-hmm.
instinctual, so to speak. And then you consider how long WWF has been around. People will get defensive about that just because it's like it's been a staple in people's lives for that long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how old is the company? It's like 70,
Yeah,
72 years
something like
old.
that.
So you're talking about a damn near an American institution. Like it's been around for longer than civil rights, and I've had the right to vote,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. So with companies like AEW, or better yet, let me backtrack a little bit. When it comes to professional wrestling, the fan base, you got the casual fans, and you got the real fans who just love it for what it is. I think that's especially nowadays where you're going to see the tribalism come out, especially with the creation of AEW. Like one of the number one narratives I hear online is that they call WWE only watchers. They call them e-drones. So yeah, because like these are the guys that'll just like shit on AEW and like blah blah blah, and it's honestly it's a back and forth. I do hear it a lot from WWE. Like I'll call them e-drones, even though me personally I watch more WWE than I do anything else. Again, it's just because it's been a part of my life. Like since I was like 4 was when I started watching wrestling. But I do appreciate other promotions. But the thing I think people don't realize, the whole tribalism, toxic takes and all that stuff, like it goes back and forth. It ain't just WWE. The thing is, they got the biggest fan base, so there's gonna be more of it. I think if you were to like look at it in terms of ratio, if it's like 50% of the WWE fan base and 50% of the AEW fan base, just like logistically speaking, it's equal. They just have a bigger fan
Mm-hmm.
base. But the stuff that you hear, it's like, okay, people who don't like WWE, oh, it's a circus, and people like, okay, you don't appreciate it, but it's not just a circus now. It's a circus, and people who watch it are idiots. I'll take offense to
Yeah.
that. I'm like, bro, I watch. Then when it comes to AEW, oh, that unsafe shit that you watch that has no storyline, like the constant back and
Hmm.
forth. So I think as it relates to Black Saturday, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and I honestly never would have thought of that. It was like the spike in the railroad. It just like started parting the waters in that sense. But I feel like it was something that was always there because like the whole thing about the territories is you're watching what you're used to. You're also watching what you had access to. If you get access to other stuff, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to watch it. And nowadays, you can't even. You don't have that deniability. There's just way too much out there.
Yeah. There's a lot of different options just to watch wrestling now. You're not just
Yeah.
handcuffed into watching one thing. And I think the most important thing about Black Saturday is this is when cable was becoming a big thing, a huge thing. And Vince McMahon was the first one to take advantage of the cable networks and saying, like, hey, most of these wrestling shows don't have contracts with their TV stations.
Mm,
So it's like, I'm going to take advantage of that. Going to be like, hey, here's some coin, put my tapes on there instead. And then what are the television shows? The TV station's like, all right, and then they're gonna
yeah.
play the deal. Everything's about money, whether we like to admit it or not. Everything anybody does within the wrestling realm, it is about money for the grand scheme of things. Like yesterday, they announced, SummerSlam is gonna be a 2-night event. You know, and
Oh
and it's not
gosh.
and it's not and
I
it's
did.
it's not gonna be, it's not because they love us, but it's like
What?
it's because there's money to be made, you know.
Bro, I didn't even know that.
Mm.
Gee, what are they doing? I can't. Something else I thought of is that Black Saturday. I guess that was probably the beginning of when ratings actually mattered in professional wrestling.
Mm, that's right.
Because I mean, prior to that, it was all local networks and stuff. It's like they didn't really care who's watching, just as long as somebody's pocket is getting
Mhm.
lined. And I'm not really sure about the business side of it, whether they paid in advance. I mean, they paid in advance for their time
Yeah.
slots. So I would imagine ratings don't really play much into whether or not they get to keep that spot. But when it came to Vince going national, it's like, okay, if everybody's going to be watching on this network, then y'all got to be pulling in numbers. I'm like, damn it, Vince. So now you just introduce a whole nother aspect to the business that wasn't there
Yeah.
before.
And what was smart, what Ted Turner did when Vince's show was failing on his network, he called in Bill Watts from Mid South to put a show on Sundays and not Saturdays to kind of like counteract. So it's like, and Bill Watts's show was doing better numbers than Vince's show because Bill Watts's
Mm-hmm.
show was more in tune to the TBS audience at the time. So Ted Turner was going to pull the plug on Vince anyway on
Mm-hmm.
TBS. So they got Jim Crockett, and then it's like, oh, we'll pay for $1 million, and then Vince said, I'll make you choke on that million, and then took the $1 million. So it's like, again, everything is about money in the grand scheme of things. And Ted was smart, and that's like, Vince was not going to give up those 2 hours, but it's like,
Yeah.
if he were to get canceled, that's going to hinder the image too of
Yeah.
WWF being this big thing. So might as well take the payout and not face that international, like, not international, just national, I guess, embarrassment that their wrestling isn't for everybody. So it's really interesting, the behind the scenes, like politics, like not only with the wrestling side of it, but with the business side as well.
Yeah.
And do you think now that, because everybody likes to play armchair quarterback when it comes to WWE and AEW, about like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this was a bad creative decision, dumb business decision, or what have you, do you
Mm-hmm.
think people nowadays, ever since AEW became a company, focus too much on the ratings and too much on the business side as opposed to how it was when we only had one promotion or company?
I think that's honestly subjective. Like I hear a lot of people say, "Why do you care about the ratings? Like you're not a part of the company. You're not getting paid this, that, and third." It's honestly just a talking
Hmm.
point. Like for people to say the ratings don't matter, if ratings never mattered, then the Monday Night Wars never would have been a
Right.
thing. And we all paid attention to the Monday Night Wars. Now, is it the same as now, considering the access to information that we have? No, it's very different. It has made people, I'm not going to say smarter, like we have access to way more information, but then you got people weighing in on things that they really don't know about. So, like, if you got things like WrestleNomics where you get the ratings and then dirt sheets are putting out, numbers like ticket sales and how much money they make, this, that, and the third. That's where you get into what you call armchair
Yeah,
quarterback.
yeah.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. I've heard of armchair
Yeah.
historians, but so I think that, like, in my opinion, it's a talking point. Like, if you want to talk about it, okay, go right ahead. But so long as you're stringing out that rope, just be prepared to hang yourself with it if you really don't know what you're talking about. I, me personally, I don't talk much about the business
Yeah.
aspect. Um, I will talk about like the ratings though, because like it's just evidence of the state of the
Mhm.
company. It's like, okay, most people will agree that the product of WWE improves because of the presence of
Mhm.
AEW. Because a lot of people tell you that WWE sucked for years when it was just them, when they were the
Yeah.
only one in the
Mhm.
market. So it's like, okay, AEW's here and it's forced WWE to step up the game. That's a good thing. So you're going to want AEW to stick around. And what I'm afraid of, because like right now, WWE's been kind of sucking. Like, I wanted Cody to finish his story. I'm glad he did. But it's like, okay, now what?
Mhm.
The problem now is the same thing you mentioned with Seth,
Mhm.
is that they don't have, there's no villain.
Mhm.
So Cody's title reign right now is stale, and it's like they're not doing much else. So I'm sorry, I'm veering off track and I'm rambling. Stop me from
No,
rambling,
no,
Richie.
come on, come on. I always enjoy talking to
So
wrestling, whatever it is. With Cody, the thing is, Cody does have a villain. It's just the villain is filming a movie right now, so you can't really, really progress that until he comes back. And
mm,
with Cody, it's his title reign feels very episodic, if that makes any sense. There's no long term, month by month
yeah,
story. With Cody, you had AJ, you had that match in France, great match, and now you have
great
Logan.
match.
It's kind of like the Batman the animated series. We're not getting a Joker episode. We're getting like Calendar Man. We're getting the Judge, episodes. And now we have to wait
Yo,
for like Mark Hamill Joker. It's like, okay, where's the Joker? Where's Two Face? Where's this? We're kind of like in that kind of period of Cody's reign right now. So
yes,
it's
dude.
more of like we need that long term, at least opposition for Cody in order to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to think of when I think of his reign. Kind of. And who
Yeah,
knows if AJ is going to come back into the fold? Who knows if Logan Paul is going to be a multi month deal? But as of now, it's like you have a lot of other things that are being pushed to the forefront. You have the King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring tournaments that's eating up a lot of time on television. You have
yeah,
again, if you want to talk about like world champions not being presented as much, look at Damian Priest, who's going through a very slow face turn, but he's feuding with McIntyre, who's also injured, and who's also feuding with another guy who's injured. So it's like they're still having constant presence on television, but you're just like, all right,
yeah.
like, where are we going?
What are we doing?
Where are we going from here? And it's just like by each week, it's like, all right, we're gonna move a little baby step forward for this story. I'm like, all right, now what? No, that's
And
all we're getting this week. I'm like, all right, I'll see you next week. And
uh,
that's how it's pretty much happening
no,
story wise, where it's just like we're like in neutral in our car, but we're still hitting the gas. So we're kind of moving,
yeah,
but we're kind of not. And I'm just like, all right, we're going, we're getting there, hopefully. But it's just like it's one of those deals where with WWE, we've been conditioned, with the pay per view schedule, with WrestleMania, Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, like the pay per views after those big shows. There's a down period, where it's like
yeah,
with the B shows they call it, and then
yeah,
it's like there's not much as big of much interest as in the B shows because what does it matter? Because nothing quote unquote big is going to happen on the B shows because you
yeah,
have Roman who's chilling. You have Rock, who's making movies. You have Seth, who's out. Drew, who's out. Punk, who's out. So again, all of, like, not only WWE but AEW's been snake bitten by injuries. You have Darby Allin, who got hit by a bus. He's wrestling on a pay per view on
Yeah,
Double or Nothing. Yeah, so and he still has a broken leg too. And it's like everybody's.
that man, he's
Yeah, you
nuts.
know what?
He's nuts.
And the thing is, he got hit by a bus, and then he went and saw a play after that. I'm like, that is the most New York thing I've ever heard of, and he's not even a New Yorker. You know what I mean?
Thanks, bro.
So,
Heck yeah.
yeah, but so it's like I think like the stories like they're always going to drag. It's just a matter of like, all right, obviously it's like we're kind of killing time until some big names come back, but it's like it's obvious that we're killing time, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. And bro, I love your analogies. Like you always hit the nail on the
No,
head with
thank
like
you.
your assessments, man. That's why I follow you. But yeah, I agree. And we're a little off topic, but we'll spend some time here, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, it's filler. Problem is like if they were, and this is me being an armed. Would you call it armchair
Yeah, yeah.
quarterback? I'm just like if they were smart about it, they could actually like start building this into something that could parallel
Mm-hmm.
the absent
Yeah.
stars. Because I'm like, really, how many feuds do we have happening right now that have long term potential? Obviously, I think probably the one people are most talking about is Ilya and
Mm-hmm.
Gunther. Um, but like, what else is really brewing? Okay, let's say Damien leaves Judgment Day. Then what? Who's he feuding with? Like, is it going to be someone that he screwed in the past? Well, the person that he screwed just before Judgment Day was
Mm-hmm.
Finn. So where's that going to go? Like, and is it going to put Finn in the world title picture? This, that, and the third. So I think this. I hate to say it, but it's just like they're not right now. At least WWE is not utilizing the amount of talent they have to like build multiple um, gripping storylines that could actually elevate more than
Right.
one or two people.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's way too much like gifted talent to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And oh no, I was about to go way off track. Let's focus. Let's
Yeah.
focus. Bring it back
All
in here.
right. So going back to Black Saturday, with the whole buying of the time slot and stuff, which is smart because as a business, you want to buy the time slot so you could promote your wrestling. The thing is, the audiences are so different, and nowadays, do you think the wrestling audience has become more diverse because there's so much of a difference in wrestling nowadays? Like you have the hardcore fans who legit like, they call it the hardcore garbage wrestling with the weapon shots and the staple guns and the doors and apparently I didn't know this. So for GCW they popularized like going through doors instead of tables, and apparently they did that because apparently getting doors is cheaper than getting tables. That's
What?
that's what I heard. I was like, oh, all right, you just put them through
Wow,
doors.
bro.
Then you have the technical wrestling, the European style where everything's like chain wrestling.
Mm.
Then you have the strong style, which is just like stiff punches, kicks. Then you have the Olympic wrestling, which is like more grapple style. Then you have the WWE style,
Mm.
where it's like babyface, come back, heel, stop, all right, we're gonna hit the five moves, doom, double shuffle, bing, bada boom. Then you have the AEW style where I'm just like, I feel like I just had a sugar rush. I don't know what happened, but I think I liked it. So, have you seen the amount of different styles increase over time, or do you think it just kind of stayed the same? But now we're more aware of different audience who like different styles of wrestling.
I think the amount of styles has definitely increased. Like, I think there was a Dark Side of the Ring episode that covered like the birth of death matches,
Mm-hmm.
that promotion that came out of Japan. I forget the guy's name who
F
started it.
and FMW, and I think it's wasn't a Noki. It was
No, not
nah. It's
Inoki.
gonna. I'm gonna remember after we record this, and it's gonna like you're gonna hear like a
Yeah.
like a split in this podcast. I'm just gonna be like, edit. It's this person. That's gonna go back.
Yeah. But like, yeah, like that wasn't really in the states, and my history is shoddy. I don't know when it became prominent in the states, but it definitely created an entire new fan base, like here in the states. Like Me personally, I can't get into death matches. Like I can watch one, but it's just like, okay, there's very little wrestling. It's just a shock value. These guys are beating the crap out of each other, and they're committed to it. So I'm like, okay. As an art form, I got respect for the guys that do it. Watching it, I think that really has created its own fan base because I really like if you're looking at people that watch this, that's all they watch. So it's like, was it? I think Combat Zone
Yeah,
Wrestling and like
CZW.
yeah, and
Yeah.
XPW. That's it. So that fan base, like they found their niche and they're sticking with it. Um, in terms of like getting exposed to newer styles, yeah, I think it's created more fans because it's again, it was just way too little exposure to the other styles here in the states, not just like from state to state, but then as a country. Like Japanese wrestling, I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't realize what they were doing in Europe. Um, and side note, honestly think that British wrestlers are like top tier.
Ooh,
Like,
yes.
gee whiz. It's just because so many of them stand out. Like in the NXT call ups that they had in WWE, all of those guys are freaking animals. Like Tyler Bate, JD McDonough, um, he hasn't been called up yet, but Nathan Frazier. It's like these guys are freaking
They're
incredible.
just like they're
So
on something
yeah,
like special.
yeah. And then of course you got freaking Osprey, the daggone like Deadpool in real life.
He is Deadpool in real life,
Gee
and I think
whiz.
it's I think I just remembered the name of FMW. It's Onita, I believe the name.
That sounds
Yeah,
about right. Onita.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was just gonna crush me if I didn't remember before the podcast was over. But but yeah, the whole styles are just amazing. But with all the styles, with the monopoly we had in WWF at the time, where there was only one
Mhm.
style, do you think, in the grand scheme of things, that monopoly of WWF was a positive for wrestling fans globally at large to introduce the masses to wrestling, and then you could figure or find out all these other wrestlings because of that? Or do you think that would have happened if there was no monopoly at all?
No, I think it honestly hurt the concept of wrestling as a whole because I mean this is where like I don't even know if you call it politics, but this is where like consumerism comes in. Is because if this is all you're presenting, there's way too many people out there where this is all they're gonna know. So like something that it's it's a joke, but it's true. Like Chris Rock talked. No, it's Cat Williams when he talked about how black people got one drink and they'll stick to it. It's like, okay, Hennessy, that's my drink. Whereas like white people will drink the whole damn bar and just like keep it coming. Let me try this, that, and third. That's what it's like with so many things besides drinks, especially here in the
Mm-hmm.
States. So when it came to wrestling and I was a part of it, it was just like, okay, WWF, that's it. That's wrestling
Mm-hmm.
for me. So getting introduced to all this other stuff, I'm like, wait a minute, this was here the whole time? So yeah, I think that it hurt like spreading wrestling, and this is why a lot like so many people treasure AEW. And at the very least, they treasure All In and what Cody and the Bucks did. Like that was a staple. Like this was the pin I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
here. And like, okay, we're putting indie wrestling on the map. And like even just the concept of indie wrestling, it's like you said before, it used to be the territories. Now it's independent. And if you stop and think about it, what are they independent? They're independent from the
Mm-hmm.
machine. That's WWE. Like that's how crazy the concept it is. Like, nah, like it's this right here. Like WWE is globally it's wrestling and anything else is considered independent. Like you guys are on your own.
Right.
That's scary.
It's almost like the creation of because Vince McMahon adapted to cable first, and that's why it's so successful. But when the evolution changed to different technologies, whether it was satellite, whether it was internet, you know, Vince wasn't as on top of the internet as probably he should have been, and because of
Mm,
that, that's how independents like Ring of Honor, PWG, uh, TNA, Impact, everything kind of
yeah.
like flowed through because they took advantage of internet, and because for WWE, they were kind of behind the eight ball with that. It was allowed
Mm,
other wrestling styles to slip through the cracks a little bit. So now
yeah.
you had Ring of Honor and you had PWG and you had all these known names kind of infiltrate the regular WWE system when Triple H took over NXT, because originally, like, I called NXT in like Black and Gold NXT PWG because that's pretty much what it was. It was PWG with a WWE banner, production logo, all of that. And that's
Wow.
pretty much what happened. So it's almost like in a roundabout way, like when WWE took over the entirety of wrestling, because they were so behind the eight ball of internet, it allowed all
Hmm.
these other independent promotions to present themselves in such a way where concurrently they were the ones who were influencing where the business was going. So it just
Wow.
kind of shows that, like, what Vince did on Black Saturday, because he was ahead of the game, but because he wasn't as ahead of the game uh, when internet was happening or whatever technology was
Mm,
happening at the time, he allowed like people like Punk, Joe, AJ Styles, this be displayed because they had no interest on them, and because he didn't take advantage of that situation, that
mhm.
gave opportunities for a lot other people to be, instead of being promoted by the WWE brand, be promoted as indie wrestling sensation, their own brand. So I think
Yeah.
because of that, even though Vince bought everything wrestling at that time, he indirectly forced people to look at indie wrestlers and wrestling as their own brand, their own superstar brand. So when we saw an AJ Styles, a CM Punk, Samoa Joe, they already had a little bit of buzz behind them. And because of that, they tried to control that buzz, as we saw with like Punk and Joe and
Mm,
AJ. But a select few of them cracked through the glass ceiling and
yeah.
became bigger stars with the WWE banner, but the initial push was from the people that were watching them. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see how, even if you're not on top of your game, like your finger is not on the pulse, media wise, it could
Mm,
just show like how it could really just flip the business on its head.
yeah. I haven't thought about it, bro.
Yeah, we ask the deep questions here on Wrestling Retold and Relived.
For real, I need a shovel to hang with
Yeah,
y'all, man.
yeah, of course, man.
Gee whiz.
No, it's like I
So,
just find it interesting that it's just like the domino effect of everything. Because hypothetically, let's say Vince got Punk or AJ before they really got hot on the independents. You know what I mean?
yeah.
They wouldn't be the same. You know, they would have been
No.
WWEized.
Oh,
You know,
heck no.
so it's just kind of like it's really just interesting that now we're at a place where everyone kind of has like free reign, you know, and with
Yeah.
the Triple H era, if you want to, and it should, like, you could criticize the Triple H era because there are some things like I don't agree with, but I like, and like it's like anything in wrestling, nothing's gonna be 1,000% perfect, but
Yeah,
a lot of people do
to be
like the
sure.
Triple H era right now as opposed to the Vince McMahon era. But I have to ask you, because with AEW, everyone says competition's good. But now that WWE is seemingly doing better than AEW, arguably, just like creative
Hmm.
wise, presentation wise, do you think people just want an alternative just so WWE can be better and then abandon the alternative? Or do you think there's a place for both, if being the alternative together? Or else it'll be kind of like when Hogan and Bischoff did Impact and it was kind of like WWE light.
Yeah. Wow. The answer to that question is not straightforward. I don't think that there's. I would say I'd break uh people into like maybe three or four groups. There are some people who like the competition because it makes WWE better, and then the competition gets better, and it's like, okay, we're all wrestling fans. We want wrestling to succeed. We actually want it to grow. It's like, you know, spreading the gospel, so to
Mhm.
speak. Um, but that's a very limited fan base. I call them objective fans. It's like they're right down the middle, and that's where I try to
Yeah.
be. Like I said before, people call me E-Drone because I like WWE more, but I watch both when I can. It's like I really want to see. One thing as a kid I remember is flipping back and forth between WWE and WCW. I like that option. So the fact that it's here today, I'm like, okay, keep it that way. Then you got other fans who are either or. It's like F the other company, we hate it. And then it's on the far left, people that are so anti WWE that they will accept anything, regardless of whether or not it's good. Um, is there room for both companies? Yes. But I don't think the fans will allow that, if I'm being honest. Because I'm like, so many objective AEW fans say they just want an alternative. But I'm in, like, on Facebook, I'm in so many wrestling groups, and most of the AEW groups I'm in, all the posts are just shitting on WWE. It's like, what do we have to do to get our numbers back up, and bring in Vince Russo so that we can make WWE crumble? And I'm like, wait, so this isn't about AEW anymore. This is just about taking down the big
Right.
pants.
Yeah.
This is about so. And I also think that honestly, AEW fans are killing the chance of the product growing and introducing it to new people because of their approach to like putting AEW like on, like introducing it to somebody new. Like, there's a friend of mine. I'm trying to get him back into wrestling, so we had him over my place to watch. I think it was Survivor Series, and he was like, he enjoyed it. He was excited. And at one point, we're talking, and it was like, yeah. And then we mentioned AEW. He's like, I don't know what that is. I'm like, wait, what? Like, this man has television, he has radio, he listens to podcasts, and he's never even heard of AEW. It's like, okay, so that tells me that their reach isn't what people think it
Yeah.
is. But you can't say that to an AEW fan, because to them, it's the best thing since sliced bread. So that just it tells me that from that perspective, it's like it's not, there's not room for both of them. Objectively speaking, especially with the way Tony Khan's been reacting to what Triple H has said, he's become one of his own fans. Like, man,
It's really funny because like when I do like my videos and stuff, I'm always hesitant doing an AEW video because I know what the
mm-hmm.
reaction's going to be. Because if I,
And that's
yeah,
smart, bro.
because it's like I would do them because I was like, for example, with Mercedes Moné in the TBS Championship, she got a shot. I was like, aren't there rankings? Like I'm like why? I'm like why is she getting? I was like I'm like why is she getting a shot? And everyone's like, oh, she's not cleared from injury. I'm like, I understand that. Then why why is she getting a shot? You know? And they're like, it's like oh, and then they'll go like, oh, you're so passive aggressive. This I'm like I'm not. I'm like I'm just want a legitimate answer because apparently the rankings are supposed to mean something, and I like that. I like the alternative. I like
Yeah,
the concept of trying something different and new, but make it make sense for me, please. And then we'll all
yeah,
be happy. But then it's just kind of like I had this one person where it was like they're like, oh, it's like I don't understand why you watch AEW if all you do is complain. I'm like, I'm not complaining. I complimented Joe Omega in different videos. And they're like, no, you didn't. I watch all your videos. I'm like, well, thank you for being a fan. First off, thank you. A little patsy on the backseat right there.
yes, yes, indeed. Thank you,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
thank you.
Hey,
But
Marcel.
it's like everybody, if you're like very pro WWE or very pro AEW, and I've met both people, and both of them scare
Yeah,
me a lot. So it's like, so it's like I'm just like in the Venn diagram where I like all kinds of wrestling, and I'm just like
yeah.
in this corner being like, it's okay, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna be fine.
Is it safe to
Yeah,
come out?
yeah. It's just like
Like,
it's okay to praise and or criticize without being negative, like hatefully negative.
yeah,
Like people need to understand this is how conversation works. I did like an AW like video where I'm just like, look, it's been 5 years. I know they're a new company, but how long can we make that excuse for the same problems we see over and over again? You
exactly.
know, and
100%.
one of
Thank you.
them's just kind of like. Uh, what did they say? They're like, well, it's like these conversations don't work because no one in power is going to listen. I'm just like, I understand that. However, if there is one person out of the whole entire, if it's between WWE and AEW, I'm going to go with the guy who looks at CageMatch.net's ratings. I think they might run across one of my videos. Not saying it's a completely like out option there thing. It's always a
Yeah,
possibility. I'm just saying it's healthy to like say like, hey, I'm not for this part of the product, but this part they're doing well. I wish they could enhance that or whatever the thing is.
yeah,
But it's just one of those things. Back to Black Saturday to tie it all up. The same complaints that they had back then with the WWE product in TBS, and you had people phone calls like that was the old thing. You phone called the station being like,
oh
"Hey, where's my
yeah.
wrestling? Where's my wrestling?
I want this crap. I ain't paying for
Who who is this Brooklyn brawler and why is he brawling?"
it.
And
That ain't wrestling.
it's like people's perception on wrestling
Yeah,
is different. And I think Black Saturday was the first case of we're accentuating like these different wrestlings, and WWE style is not always going to win out, no matter how popular they're going to be. It's like the music industry,
yeah.
because the goal was always to sign with a giant record label. But then
Mm-hmm.
once the internet got introduced, you have people
Yep,
independently showing up their labels. You know what I mean?
yep.
So it's like you got bands like Imagine Dragons, like you got independent bands like Fozzy.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Oh God, don't, bruh, don't go there. We ain't going there. We are not going there.
it's all right. I'll
Yeah.
go by a tree later and learn. so,
Yo,
but
nah, but
again, it's like
I mean,
the wrestling business right now is like any other business you're going to see, like with competitors. It's almost impossible to get a full monopoly. WWE was really close with the Black Saturday deal, but
yeah.
it's just an impossibility at this point. What are your thoughts on WWE trying that, globally expanding? Do you think it's wise to globally expand like how they're doing with the pay-per-views in different countries now? And do you think AEW, since they did the All in Wembley Stadium, do you think that's going to be the future of wrestling in general?
I do actually. I think that the global expansion with the pay per views in multiple countries, I think that is very smart. I think it's one of the things that's basically kept them ahead of the curve when it comes to other promotions, particularly AEW, because like was all in even a thing because they were trying to compete with WWE, or were they genuinely trying to expand on their own? I feel like this was the beginning of Tony Khan genuinely trying to compete with WWE, because what that was last year,
Mm-hmm.
right? All in.
Yeah,
I think how many out of country pay per views did the WWE do last year? I think it was at least
yeah,
two.
they did Money in the Bank in London, I believe,
Uh huh.
and
And then they had
they
Saudi
had they had Crown Jewel.
Crown
Yeah,
Jewel. Was Elimination Chamber in Saudi, or was that this year?
that was Elimination Chamber. Was in the Saudi. No,
No,
Elimination Chamber
no,
was no Australia. It was in Australia.
it was Australia.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
forgot because
they did.
I woke up at like 5 in the morning to watch the pay per view. I was
Yeah,
like, oh, and my friend and I, like after the pay per view, we were just like, it was a good pay per view. It was a good show. I'm just not. I'm like we're like half awake, and we're like, I'm not
yeah.
sure if it was 5 a.m. good though. So I'm just like, just a
Boy,
little
yeah.
taste on like how the rest of the world feels about the pay per views, like being like they have to wake up absurdly early or do like all nighters. So I give him a bunch of credit because it's like he's crashing on like an air mattress. I'm just sleeping. We have our alarms on at like four, like at 4:45, we're both waking up. And it's like
Yeah.
we're drinking C4s just to kind of like stop from nodding off. It's like we're we just
Bruh.
like do the whole thing like every because
Yeah.
this year WWE is really leaning into the advertisements. So it's like
Oh
as a
yeah.
joke, we bought like C4 Slim Jims, like like we have like the Cricket Wireless like website on in the background, just like
Yeah.
it's like consumerism. It's always going to win.
You got You guys didn't have any Prime?
Uh,
You kidding me?
you know, with Prime, I feel like Prime and C4 won't mix that well.
I never tried either.
Uh, C4 I just can't have anymore because it's just like so much caffeine.
Yeah. Is it sugary?
Uh, not really sugary. It's just more like I get like the tingles like down like the whole body,
Oh shoot.
where I'm just
Yeah.
like my body's like it's like tingly but also kind of itchy, but I'm not itchy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't like this.
Yeah, I like
I'm
that
like,
feeling.
I'm like, get away. Just wake up.
Get this out of my
Yep.
system. So yeah, like I think it's pay-per-views in other countries, and supposedly I'm not sure if my information is right, but supposedly the Netflix
Mhm.
deal will grant more countries access to Monday Night
Mhm.
Raw in particular. So I mean, they've had WWE, they've had to change the game. Like they've had to. I feel like maybe that 10-year plus period where they did have the monopoly on the market, they weren't really thinking about
Mhm.
expanding. Because, like, even with the WWE network, I don't think they really put any real energy into that, which is how we ended up
Right.
here. It's not a thing except for the rest of the world. And even then, I think the global platform is supposed to shut down within the next year or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So, um, I think that they've managed to stay on top because of one thing, and this is something that AEW has yet to learn. Because a lot of people will, one of the number one things that people will shit on when it comes to WWE is it's a kids product. It's kids, like, like almost like that's a
Mhm.
knock, like an insult. Y'all are failing to realizing that that's where the money
Mhm.
is. And because WWE is kid friendly, that's how they've maintained a monopoly on the market. Because what they do, regardless of whether or not it's good wrestling, it works for television and what television has become now.
Mhm.
So the kids that watch that are keeping these people fed. I think one thing that will definitely change the game for AEW is if they learn that
Yeah.
formula.
Absolutely. With AEW, it is a wrestling show on television. With WWE, it's a television show about wrestling.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
the why they're where they are through all this time, because it's all about, the marketing. And it's actually funny, I went to AEW World's End. It was like my first live show in like years, and my friend, we've always been to like WWE shows. We were like in a like an Impact or TNA house show before, but we sat down like an AEW, and I'm just like, gave him a heads up. I'm like, bro, just so you know, these aren't like the fans that we know from WWE. And he looked at me like kind of funny. And then we sit
Mm-hmm.
down, and like you see the arena. He's like, bro, I didn't know what you were talking about, but man, like it's like a
Uh,
whole different vibe. It's a different
yeah.
audience. And I think when people say it's like, oh, WWE is a kid show, let me tell you something. Like I don't have children of my own, but I have friends who have
Mm-hmm.
children or baby cousins that they will watch or something. The amount
Mm-hmm.
of times I listen, like, who this Bluey is, I don't know what Bluey is, but I've learned more about Bluey in the past 2 years than anything else. I'm like, what's Bluey? It's like, oh, it's this kid show. It's great. I'm like, what? Why do I need to know what Bluey is? And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, change your perception of life. I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right. It's like, I will believe
Oh,
you.
okay.
It's like if I'm going for the fountain of youth, I guess Bluey will teach me then. Oh shit! But it's like, it
Absolutely.
just shows that if you start at the kids, that's going to
Yeah.
translates to the adults. I mean, look at the Pokemon craze. It came out when I was like
Yeah.
6. Like there are still people my age and older who were still playing it. And it's like, and now it's one
Yeah.
of the biggest franchises companies in the world. Same with that. Hello
Yeah.
Kitty, uh, freaking Magic the Gathering. Beyblades are making a
Right.
comeback, and I'm like, my friend's like, you want to? He's like,
It's
you want to learn about Beyblades? I'm like, do I want to learn about Beyblades?
oh, so you teaching me something new. I don't even know what
No,
that
so it's like
is.
it's like
What?
battling tops.
Like
Like
Pogs?
like you just take the tops and you spin it, and they battle each other. and you have to knock one out of the arena.
Oh, okay. I thought you just, like, it sounds, the way you described it for a second, you said battling
Yeah.
tops. That made me think of
Oh yeah,
Pogs.
yeah. Like it's not Pogs. It's kind of close, but it's like, well, I don't know what Pogs are, so I
Pogs, okay. Pogs was basically, it was, the initial concept was milk caps from bottles,
oh okay, yeah,
and you stack them up, and then you have a slammer, which is just a metal
okay,
one.
yeah,
You slam the pile, and however many would turn over
yeah,
face up.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Like, that's how you quote unquote win. The thing is, there really weren't any games involved. The whole thing about Pogs was how many you can
Mm-hmm,
collect. Like, they had cases for it, and there was themes. A lot of them were anime based. They had cartoons, this, that, and the
mm-hmm.
third. So if you were cool, like when I was in middle school, at like 96, 97, you had to have
Right.
Pogs. It was just like, but it fizzled out overnight because I don't know, when people started realizing, this is stupid. Like, it wasn't even a game. It was just, I got this slammer. And of course, this was when this was Attitude
Right.
Era, so that was another
Oh,
one. I'm sure WWE had
I'm
plenty of
sure they
pauses.
did.
It was like
Yeah.
you had a Stone Cold Slammer, bam! Like, stuff like that. It was crazy.
Yeah,
That's what it made me.
but no,
No, go
Beyblades
ahead.
is like battling tops. It's like top cockfighting. You pick your top, you spin it, and whoever
Yeah.
wins wins.
See, now I gotta look into this. Oh gosh,
So I hope you got some
no,
money saved.
I do not. Damn it,
Yeah, it's all right. It's all
I
right.
do not.
We'll
So
get
yeah.
we'll get into the finals next year.
Oh
We'll
god.
meet at SummerSlam in 2026 for day two.
For
You
date. Oh my god. I don't know how to feel
know.
about that. I don't know if
I
that's a
have a
good move.
theory, and the reason why we're getting 2 days of SummerSlam in Minneapolis is that year WrestleMania is probably going to happen overseas.
So it'll be one night.
So it'll be 2 nights overseas, but we still get our
Two
2 night
nights.
event in the US.
In the States.
Uh,
Oh God, Brian. Sorry. Stewie Griffin
no,
moment.
no,
Oh,
every
dude.
Stewie Griffin. Probably my favorite one is like they take everything out of his room and
Uh,
he's just lying on the floor in his pajamas and he's like, I hate it here. And I'm just like I'm
yeah.
like, bro, like if that's me, like
Uh,
posting like an AEW video and then I just see like everything like going, I was just like all these
yeah.
comments, I'm just like, I hate it here. And just like joking. But anyway, back on topic. What are your overall thoughts on Black Saturday, how it influenced the wrestling business, and do you think we're still feeling the effects of Black Saturday to this day?
Overall, like, it's knowing that it indirectly led to the creation of WrestleMania. Um, it just has like a double, a two-edged sword, basically, because McMahon went at the heart of the wrestling industry, not just the audience, like the industry as a whole. And then on the flip side, creates what is now the high point of any wrestler's career, year after year after year. Like, I'm not sure when it became the thing, but it is now, and it has been for like at least 20 plus
Right.
years. Um, honestly, we barely scratched the surface. Like, something I had wanted to talk about was what it meant to the NWA.
Oh, let's get into that. It's like again, we can
Oh,
still go, brother. It's like yeah,
oh heck yeah! Because I did a video maybe almost 2 years ago. Something that has always bugged me when it came to professional wrestling is the concept of a world
mhm,
champion. And I think that today's world champions, it's just what wrestling has devolved into. It's not necessarily the best form. The NWA champion made sense because of the multiple promotions, there being one world champion and him having to defend it against other wrestlers in other parts of the world. That makes perfect sense to have one world champion. And when it comes to WWE, it makes more sense than other promotions because it's worldwide and you got wrestlers from all over the world coming to face our guy. Okay, cool. Impact should not have a world champion. XPW should not have, like, the whole concept of world champion. It just means now it's the company's top
Mm-hmm.
belt. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
that. This is me being picky, but I'm just like, it's like I said before, it's what wrestling has devolved into, and like something that Ruthless Talk James he has mentioned is like how the lingo has changed. That everything is the
Yeah.
greatest, everything is the best, and I feel like the whole championship thing has stemmed from that, so to speak. It's like, how does every wrestling promotion have a world champion? If you're the best in the world, that means you beat everybody in the
Right.
world. It's clear. It's clear as day that Swerve has not beaten everyone in the
Mm-hmm.
world, but he's the world champion. So I think that the NWA formula was the most sensical, and I almost wish that they would actually reabsorb, not reabsorb, but take over, or at least get involved with all these indie promotions and like actually give them credibility to kind of act as like a
Mm-hmm.
third spoke in the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because at the top, it's just WWE, AW. I'm like, what if all these promotions actually got behind the AW belt? And it's like, nah, like we're making
Right.
waves.
It's one of those things with NWA. It has been very diluted,
Mm,
just like in terms of prestige and in terms of just notoriety. That it's like I
yeah,
do like the look of the 10 pounds of gold. You know what I mean? And it's just like it just kind of makes sense. You know?
I thought I was the
No,
only
I
one.
like it
I
because
love
I
it.
still remember like when Impact had it and you had Christian Cage. He was like in the white gear, like pointing to the NWA championship. I'm like, that's my world champion.
Yeah,
You know? And
yeah,
then of course with just NWA and just everything in general because it's kind of been less prestigious depending on like the controversies and everything like that. It just kind of makes sense when you're the world champion. You should be the one who's traveling the world. And now other companies who are having their world champion or heavyweight championship and they're not traveling the world as much, is it really a world
mm,
championship or is it more of a marketing ploy for
mm,
advertisement for your product? And if that's the case, it's a
yeah,
smart way to advertise your product to gain importance of this championship. But is it there to promote your guy or promote your brand? And with NWA,
mm,
it wasn't only promoting the brand, it was promoting the guy who was carrying the championship, like a Ric
yeah,
Flair, like a Kerry Von Erich, like a Harley Race. Like we all know these guys as legendary names because they held that championship. But
yeah,
now, people who have held the NWA championship now, it's just another accolade instead of
mm,
carrying the weight of being the NWA world champion. It doesn't have that meaning behind it as it once did. And Black Saturday definitely took away from that for a certain
yeah,
thing because NWA was the umbrella, like we said earlier. But unfortunately, McMahon took all these people under the umbrella, put them under his own shelter, you know, and
yeah,
now it's like it's not really covering anything anymore. So it was forced to be the top prize for WCW for a bit, and then it kind of broke away when WCW became too big for the NWA, and
mm,
that's why I don't think the concept of the NWA Championship, even though I would like to see it to return for the different independents and promotions, it's just going to be hard to have all these different independents team up when a lot of these are self-funded and they're focused on putting up their own product, then change the wrestling business for like going back to that territory like system, because then you're always going to have, well, without the board like NWA had, you're going to have people
mm,
with their own incentives and their own thing. It's like, well, my guy should have it, oh, my guy should have it, and then it just kind of like goes on from there. It's almost like if like you're advertising like somebody to be at like a local indie, for an autograph signing. Let's say like Cody Rhodes is going
mm,
to be at an autograph signing for your local independent. It's not going to say just Cody Rhodes. It's going to say WWE superstar Cody Rhodes.
yeah.
It's always going to
Totally.
be about branding. It's like, oh, this is my champion or this is my star. I created him. This is how we're going to promote the brand. But it's like not going to be everybody's brand. It's going to be my brand.
But I feel like that's. I mean, yeah, like I agree, but I feel like it's almost nonsensical for small promotions to try to put their brand like, okay, if you're okay, I mean, they don't call it territories anymore, but let's be
Hmm.
frank, a lot of the smaller promotions really don't have reach outside of their county.
Right.
And they're like, okay, if that's what you want to be known
Hmm.
for, okay, fine. Some people do it just for the love of
Yeah.
wrestling, and those are the guys that aren't interested in
Hmm.
growing per se. They just want to maintain and just keep putting on shows. Okay, cool. But I feel like there's way too many guys that are like, especially with the amount of like marketing that goes on, especially like social media. These guys are trying to actually get their name out
Hmm.
there. You're not, even though the prestige of the NWA isn't what it was. I can still pull up YouTube or something. It's like NWA. The name is still known within the wrestling
Right.
community, and especially with Cody, putting it on blast. He's one of four men who have held the NWA and WWF titles. Now people like pay attention to that for even if it's just like a flash in the
Yeah.
pan. For a moment, Cody Rhodes put that on blast. And it's like if enough smaller promotions actually did get behind it, it was like, okay, it's not our guy, but our people are on the
Yeah.
program. Our guy will have a shot in such and such. And it's like, okay, then you're talking about making money, getting your people's names, in the spotlight, and vice versa. I don't think it's impossible. And NWA actually has two independent promotions under their belt. I forget which
I believe
ones.
one is like one that's run by EC3. Yeah. I'm not sure if
Yes,
it's the Monster Factory is another one. Not sure.
I'd have to look it up
Yeah, but
again.
it's like
But
it's one of two so far. So the attempt is there. The attempt is there. It's just
yeah,
a necessity of having a talent that's interesting within that realm, or else it's like
yeah,
not going to interest anybody. It's kind of like when ECW broke away from the NWA too. You know what I mean? Because it's just kind of like they felt
yeah.
like NWA was like this old passe thing that passed it by to become this new product. And I think a lot of people are looking to be that new product, that new ECW, like Ring of Honor was, like GCW is
Mm,
now doing, instead of being affiliated with an old brand, quote unquote. But we've seen a lot
mm,
of old vintage stuff come back into prominence. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So from wrestlers to like brands in general. So there's like how many movies have we seen that have been brought back in the prom like franchise? We had Indiana Jones, and he's like 87 years old, like at this point, you know. So it's like we're still having like
Yeah,
nostalgic brands uh, up to the forefront, but it just kind of depends on what people kind of want to do with the product in the future.
yeah. I think honestly is too many. There's way too many old heads that are around like running product. Is like if you watch Power, it still has the old feel. Like I'm not again. Like they have the old blue ring
Hmm.
apron with the big yellow letter, and they still use that. I I'm okay with that every once in a while, but just overall, the aesthetic of the program, it still looks like they trapped in the
Hmm.
'70s. I'm like, oh guys, like I don't know if they're really trying to move forward. Or they're just trying to maintain. Like it feels like you know, call back to the territories. Program looks the same. It's like, are you trying to recreate or are you trying to
Yeah,
grow? I wish they were trying to grow. Um, but I also wish that. Well, I don't wish that. I wonder what it would have been like to be a wrestling fan back when that title
yeah.
meant something.
It's almost like Saved by the
Be-
Bell, the new class.
wait, wait, how?
Because it's like it's still the same old aesthetic, but it's like you got all these new
Uh,
wrestlers that are coming, and you're like,
oh
and you're
yeah,
like,
uh,
I don't know these guys. Like, and but then you'll still
it's
have like Mr. Belding there or something like
Screech.
that. Like you still have like the guys come back, but it's like not the ones that we
Yeah,
want to come back and see. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like everything like that. And I think
yeah.
wrestling's pushed the boundaries of what they can do. Like Lucha Underground, revolutionary product in my opinion, just the way
Mm,
of how they're telling stories and while also incorporating wrestling, like being like a telenovela drama show while also featuring some of the best wrestling in the world at that point. So I think people's more inclined to try something new and different and get their name out that way than revert to something old that probably could work, but it probably is counterintuitive to a certain extent.
Mm, yeah, wishful thinking on my
No,
part.
I definitely like it.
I mean,
I do want to see like the indies unite and revolt and just kind of like overthrow everything to create chaos.
for real,
Yeah,
like that'd be so
yeah,
awesome.
like and just like
And I,
partnerships you don't expect. Like you could have like no like someone from pro wrestling Noah come and like go like run
yeah,
roughshod here in the states, or you could have old independent favorites. And with AEW, they do have like partnerships with different promotions. It's just now they're kind of at a point where if the partnerships are going to be beneficial towards them, because we saw Eddie
yeah,
Kingston break his leg at a New Japan Strong show, and
mm,
you're gonna have other wrestlers. I forgot his name, but like he broke his jaw at an independent uh, wrestling show, and then he was released, and then Tony Khan said, no, 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 like he's not released. He's just like on hold until he comes back. So he rehired him a little bit. So it's
oh
just kind
wow,
of like I'm like, yeah, probably firing someone with a broken jaw is
this a bad
not a good
look.
look. Not saying it hasn't happened before with WWE, so the AEW people don't
Yeah,
attack me because I don't know if you guys know this. Y'all are
yeah,
scary. Yeah,
terrifying. Good grief.
but yeah, it's just like one of those things. Is like how as much as a fan as Tony Khan is with wrestling traditionalism, like Japanese, lucha libre, like all styles of
Mm.
wrestling, it's going to come to a point where I'm not sure if it's going to be beneficial for the AEW brand going forward. Because I think a lot of steam with AEW was lost when they bought Ring of Honor, and
Oh,
when Ring of
absolutely.
Honor was bought, and we didn't know what was going on with Ring of Honor, like if they're getting like a television deal, and you see all these Ring of Honor like stars and champions on television. It was almost like a backdoor pilot to show TBS, hey, we have this other product, so you could like throw it at it, and they're like, yeah, what about AEW?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. What else you
yeah.
got going on here? No, no, no.
What if, it's like I see that. What if we do Collision AEW? What if we do that? And they're like, and it's like,
You guys got Punk. You guys got CM Punk. Wrap it all together. This
it's
is
like
good.
AEW has like the shocked Pikachu face or something, and they're like,
Yeah.
they're, they're like, oh no. And now it's like we're at a point where you're seeing Ring of Honor champions on television constantly losing, and but on the Ring of
Yeah.
Honor show, they're still like winning. So I'm just like, am I supposed to like where's my mind supposed to
Yeah.
be with these stars? So that's like my biggest concern with AEW, like trying to be, because it is kind of like what you're saying, what you want with like a more territorial system with more promotions kind of under an umbrella with a traveling champion, but it's now
Yeah.
more of a partnership between all the brands. And of course politics are going to get involved, which is why in Double or Nothing it's a IWGP not like contenders match, or with Takeshita and Moxley,
Oh
and not a
yeah.
championship match. So
Like
yeah,
Eliminator
championship eliminator. Yeah,
something. Oh gosh, yeah. I can't remember. I saw someone's video made a video about how like it was a silly call. You're gonna put that match on a pay per view. Man. Sorry.
no, no,
I
it's
was gonna say it. I won't say it
no,
here,
it's
but
fine.
I like the whole concept. The whole concept of um, having a champion defend in multiple promotions. Like it wouldn't have to be NWA. It could have been AEW, but it's clear that Tony's not trying to go in that
Mm.
direction. Because even with you had Omega at the I don't even remember what year it was where he
He had
had
like everything.
everything. He was like TNA champion. He had was it one of New Japan
It was
belts?
the Triple A Mega Championship.
Triple A Mega Championship. And I'm like, okay, have they even interacted with TNA with the exception of having a couple of
Hmm.
wrestlers like since
Hmm.
then? You're seeing less and less of that. And also the international championship. when it was the All Atlantic Championship, they said Pac was defending in other promotions. And I'm like, I could have sworn when they introduced Cassidy's International Championship, they said that's what it was going to
Mhm.
be. He can take this all around the world, defend it anytime, anywhere, any promotion. It's never, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but it's never been defended in other promotions. I'm like, okay, this is again a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it's one of those like it's almost like AEW. They have like great concepts, they have great
Mm-hmm.
setups. Just long term, the ending isn't there. Like the
Mm,
conclusion isn't there. It's like having this awesome like beginning of a story or a movie, and then the screen cuts to black, and you're just like, it's like we were just getting started here, and then
yeah,
it's like, oh, sorry. It's like that's all you get.
man, yeah.
Everybody gets one.
Like I feel like they can just do so much just with that title
Yeah.
alone if it really was like seen in other promotions. Because again, like I said before, AEW still it's not doesn't have the reach that everyone thinks
Mhm.
it does. Like I mentioned, my personal story
Mhm.
where my friend hadn't heard of it, even though he's trying to get back into
Yeah.
wrestling. But I think if you consider what happened with Aubrey Edwards and Jericho, the proof is in the pudding. I forget what rock band it was or who was, but you heard that story about Aubrey
Oh, what
Edwards.
happened?
So she was somewhere and she tried to like flex. It was with some rock band. She was like, "Oh, you don't know me? I'm on TV. I'm an AEW referee." And they're like, "What the hell's AEW?" And it was like, she had a moment where she was feeling herself, not realizing you're a part of a growing
Mhm.
product. Not everyone's heard of
Right.
it. And then with Jericho, did you hear about the Jericho thing?
Jericho has a lot of stories out there. I don't know which one.
It was one where he was in some other country drunk, acting up, and he was like threatening to fight a guy. He's like, "You don't know who I am? I'm Chris Jericho." It's like, okay, if my thinking is that he's thinking that because he's on television again, people are going to start remembering like that
Mhm.
guy. But I'm like, you haven't been in WWE for how long? You're wrestling for a company that still the name is
Mhm.
growing. So it's like clearly the proof is in the pudding in terms of AW does not have the reach that
Yeah.
WWE has, but it's also like their reach is not
Mhm.
extending. Do something
Mhm.
different. Now, I'm not saying that promoting the international title and other promotions is going to fix that overnight. It's just going to be one of the contributing factors to like get the name
Yeah.
out there because there's plenty of like the All In thing was significant not just because they discovered that they had a huge fan base there, but it's like these people had not gotten a live show like that in however
Mhm.
long, so of course they got that kind of reception. But you still have to reach the masses in like so many other outlets and facets. So it's like take those chances. I think right now they're so focused on competing with WWE that they're missing the bigger picture. In my
It's
opinion.
almost like that meme with the guy gets the medal placed around his neck and he's like doing the champagne like shower and stuff, and he's like still like in the he's not even
Yeah.
in like the top thing. It's
Yeah.
like you're accomplishing all this. That's great. That's cool. What's
Yeah.
tomorrow going to bring? The wrestling business
Well,
is a what have you done for me lately kind of business, which is why when Cody won the championship and now it's kind of like there's no story that's gripping the people. They're like, all right,
yep.
this is failing or whatever. And
Yeah.
then like same thing with Jay and Jimmy, because like when Jay was doing the solo thing, everyone's like, oh, Jay's good, he's this, he's that. And then when he had that match with Jimmy, everybody's like, Jay is terrible. He's the worst thing on my television screen. And I'm just like, oh wow, everyone's
Yo.
just flipping on Jay, and that's
Yeah,
because of
turn.
the latest performance. And with AEW,
Yeah.
it's a lot of you have to keeping your fans consistently happy, and the audience that are
Yeah.
still trepidatious on you being around, you have to still kind of prove to them as an alternative to WWE. So it
Yeah.
is what it is when it comes to AEW. And if they're cool and content where they are, that's great. If they still want
Mm-hmm.
to grow, again, always in more of an opportunity. And I think because it's just like, oh, they're on TV, that's not the end goal. Your reach is still not as big as
Mm-hmm.
WWE. And you
Yeah.
could just kind of like see like where people are like this, like AEW. Oh, this is my company because I helped because the fans helped All In the first time, and now AEW's here because of me. It's because of me, and then it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
look, I understand that, I get it, it's cool. I liked All In too. I watched Being the Elite before the whole AEW thing. You know,
Hmm.
I don't take credit for the AEW like movement at all. I'm just a cog in the machine.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a cool movement for wrestling, but now it's more of what's next. And I'm not even sure if
Hmm.
AEW knows what's next themselves.
Yeah. I think yeah. Like all I was not watching during All In. Of course, like the whole my knowledge of the indie scene was
Mhm.
non-existent at that point. But just like looking back from a history standpoint, I can see the significance of All In, and that's where Cody definitely made his mark. But I will say this: I don't think enough people realize the overall product of AEW took a nosedive when Cody
Mhm.
left. I think that Cody was the voice of reason when it came to creative decisions backstage. I don't know about the business side, but I'm just like his wrestling IQ is up there with the best of them. Like this guy really understands the business. He knows what works, and him not being that counterweight has definitely tipped the scales. Because if you were just looking at numbers, they haven't the flagship show. You got Dynamite. They haven't hit a million since I don't even know how long. And then when they did, it's bleed over from freaking like the Big Bang Theory
Oh, I hate
runs.
that show.
I happen to love it. I think it's hilarious, but that's not here nor there. But just like okay, so it shows just from like an audience standpoint, they're not pulling in more
Mhm.
people. They have a loyal fan base, and I'm not even going to say that it's keeping the boat afloat. Tony Khan's keeping it afloat. But in terms of the reach that they have, are they really reaching new
Mhm.
eyes? Are new people paying attention? I'm like, okay, proof is in the pudding. No. And is it enough to just stay afloat in this business, in this day and age, with Big Brother watching? I could be wrong, but I don't think
Mhm.
so. I don't think it's enough to just maintain because, like, it's not even about being an alternative anymore. You have to grow in order to stay afloat. Not even try, like, forget about trying to put WWE out of business. Like, this ain't WCW. Like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I also don't think that AEW is going to go out of business either. But is it going to be what it is now in 10
Mhm.
years? Or is it going to be another TNA? I have no clue. Because, like, I don't know what it was like. I don't know what the downturn was for TNA.
With TNA, it's a lot of more of the business side. Because
Mm.
Dixie Carter was the primary, like she was the president, but her parents like funded through the Panda Energy Company, and then
Oh.
they were like, all right, no mas, like this is not really turning a profit. And then it went to Billy Corgan, which is where we get GFW, and then it went to Anthem, who bought it,
Mm.
and now we have Impact as we know today. With AEW, Tony Khan is paying for it himself, so this is
Yes.
his project, so to speak. People will say it's like, oh, it's his father who's actually paying for it. I'm like, I'm just doing Tony Khan, so please, semantics, everyone, just lay off a little bit. I'm well aware. It's just easier to say Tony Khan because he's controlling
Yeah.
the business moves, and now he's at a
Yeah.
point where there are actually releases happening to stars under contract, where it wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
case anymore. So
Yeah.
now it's going to be okay. We have Tony Khan, the friendly boss, but now we need to see more of Tony Khan, the businessman. Like you could go
Yeah.
on the NFL and say we're Pepsi and WWE's Harvey Weinstein, even though that comparison it was indeed a comparison that happened, and I understand why he said it, but if you want to
Yeah.
promote your own product, tell us about your world champion. Tell us about the hottest angle that's going on. Tell us
Yeah.
everything, all the positives we have to your company. If I'm if I'm AEW or any opposing company, I'm just propping my
Mm-hmm.
company up. The words WWE aren't leaving my mouth.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, this is
Exactly.
my product. Do you think Coca-Cola will go out there and they'll be like, yeah, we did this. Look at Pepsi. Look at what Pepsi's doing. Those heathens. Crystal
Those,
Pepsi.
yeah.
Crystal Pepsi? Are you kidding me?
Those
We
bastards.
got Sprite. We got
Oh god.
we got all of
What
them. And Pepsi, all they got is a neat little logo.
you just got a promo on Pepsi, bro.
It's funny. I was on a live yesterday, and they're like, why do you keep talking in promos? It's like I don't mean to. It's just a lot of things just like grind my gears a little bit. But it's just like,
Yeah.
but anyway, with Black Saturday, because that's a topic at hand. Uh, what do you think was the most pivotal moment of Black Saturday? Was it the purchase of the television stations, or was it the sell back?
No, I think it was a sellback. But and this is like we said, there's a lot of zigzags. I find it so funny. Jim Crockett ends up buying the time slot, and then within 3 years has to sell his whole daggone company to Ted Turner. I'm like, what the? And I don't even. This is something I got to do some more research. I'm like, what the heck happened in those like 3 to 4 years where he was at the top of his game, gets a time slot he didn't have before that was the number one wrestling show on TV, and then has to sell his product. I'm like, so did WrestleMania happen? What year? Mania was what, 86, the first one?
84.
84. So WrestleMania 3 was like the one that, oh shoot, I just answered the wrong
And
question.
then like you had some counter products like Survivor Series. Survivor Series was a counter product to Starcade.
Oh,
So that's why
shoot.
Survivor Series happened.
Yeah.
It was either Starcade or was it Clash of the Champions? It was one of them. So it was like a counter programming towards something. Same thing with the Rumble TV special.
Yeah.
It was originally a TV special, not a pay per view. So that's where it started going down for WCW.
Oh wow, bro. The first Starcade was what?
Starcade I think was older than
Yeah,
WrestleMania.
like
Let me
it
just
was.
double check.
No, that was like the 70s. Because like even I think like the graphic artwork was still in like black and white.
From 83 to 2000. So it was 83 was the first one. So it actually predates
Wow.
WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm. So just like, man.
Jeez, it's
Honestly, to this day, I hate the WCW folded.
yeah.
I wish it was still a thing. And even if they did fold, I honestly wish that WWE treated it like a subsidiary rather than the whole brand split.
Mm-hmm.
I think the brand split is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
If they had kept WCW alive within the company, the brand split would make perfect sense, I feel like. But just as a company, like Black Saturday leading to Ted Turner taking over, and like you got the first however many years. Because when did Turner take it? Was that 90?
It was like
No,
it was
88.
it was not it was in 90s I think. It was like off the top of my head, I think this was 90. It was either 90 or I think it was 90. Yeah, I think it was 90.
I think
Yeah,
90.
because they had all those
So he
players.
take yeah, and then you had the what I believe was the Bill Watts era, which wasn't good. Which
He got rid of
Vince,
the protected matting because he's like, real men don't do that. What are you trying to do in this predetermined sport? Be safe? No. And they're like, all right, cool.
yo,
Can we do a move off the top? No. What is this? A
no,
circus? And the
bruh,
funny thing is, like, he loved Rob Van Dam. He
for
loved
real?
Rob Van. Like he was Rob Van Dam was Robbie V when he came
Wow,
in, and he wouldn't
the
go off the
irony.
top rope. He would just do the split like a moonsault kind of deal.
Yeah.
Because it's like that's what you do. That's what you would do at the time. You have that split legged. It's like,
Oh wow.
oh wow. And then when Bill Watts left, then it was, I think, Jim Herd, the Pizza Hut guy. He was the guy who told Ric Flair that he was going to repackage him, have an earring, shave, like cut his hair, and be Spartacus.
Oh hell! Like Kurt Kirk Camp,
Yeah,
not Kirk Campbell.
yeah,
What's Kirk Douglas? Kirk
Kurt
Douglas.
Douglas. Yeah,
Oh heavens to Betsy!
that's why
The
that's
front.
why Rick left WCW to
That's what.
WWF. Yeah,
And took Big Gold
he
with him.
took him with him because he didn't get his deposit, because that was the thing back then,
Oh
like
yeah.
the money deposit. Imagine if that happened now. I'll drop the title if you give me money.
Oh shoot, that'd be
And that's why
nuts.
we have contracts today.
Yeah. Thanks, Ric Flair.
So
That crazy thing is that I did a video a long time ago about how Ric Flair has remained relevant in almost every era of televised wrestling without ever having to change his gimmick.
yeah,
Now, like his personal antics aside, you can feel how you want to. I'm not even gonna touch that because I ain't. But I will say, just him as a wrestler, career wise, dude, he's not on everybody's Mount Rushmore, but if he is, he deserves that spot. Like, come on,
I
man.
just love that you heard of the pizza story, right?
Yeah.
So Ric Flair, they cut him off of alcohol at like a pizza
Yeah.
joint, and he's like,
Yeah.
"I'll buy this place," and then he
Uh-huh.
like said like, "This is terrible business." This, that, and the other thing. He tweeted every letter capitalized. I don't know why. And then the
Yeah.
next day, he's like, "Oh, it was a big misunderstanding. This, that, and the other thing." Even though he said like, "I'll
Uh-huh.
never order there again."
Uh-huh.
Next day, they said they got a DoorDash request from Ric Flair himself to get some food from that place. I
Unbelievable.
can't write this
I
as
can't.
much, like I can't make it up, and that makes me happy that we have Ric Flair to continue on with his legacy.
And like, and even in the video when he's arguing with the cash register, he's like, "I come in here, I bring my family, and I try to put this place over." I'm like, bro, they don't know what that means.
Put,
This isn't wrestling.
put this voice. I love when
I try
wrestlers use wrestling terminology in real life, because it really
yeah,
shows how nuts everything is. All right,
facts.
but anyway,
Oh man.
so Mr. Scotty Wrestling, thank you for joining me here on Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars about Black Saturday. Please plug all of your stuff. Where can the people find you?
You can find me primarily on TikTok, Scotty Wrestling. You can find me on Talk of Champions, which is the shirt here.
Yes.
That's the podcast slash group talk slash whatever that was started by my cousin Stan Michael and Shantiz. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. And yeah, Richie, bruh, thanks again for having me, man. I so appreciate the invite. And I would love, FYI, I would love to do this
Yeah,
again, man.
absolutely, man. Open invite. Anytime you have an idea to talk shop, we'll do just that.
Okay. And I promise I'll try to stay more on topic
No,
next
please.
time.
This was a blast. We need more of this. so,
Cool,
so
man.
thank you so much for joining me, Scotty. And that is this episode of Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us at Retold Richie Mars on the Instagram and the Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. TTFN, Tata for now, and we will see you later.